In a world that feels increasingly disconnected, meaningful success begins with purpose, trust, and human connection. Every week, we explore the stories behind people building businesses, organization, and lives that matter. We'll ask one simple question: what did you love enough to build? And together, we'll discover the ideas, relationships, and defining moments that shape meaningful success. Because fear gets compliance, and trust creates commitment. The Two River Exchange, where leaders, ideas, and the human connection meet. So welcome to the Two Rivers Exchange, where we explore the human side of success through conversations with leaders, founders, and change makers who discover that meaningful achievement begins with purpose, trust, and connection. I'm your host, Owen Burns, and each episode will ask the question, what did you love enough to build? And today I'm honored to be working with someone who has shaped generations of leaders whose impact continues to ripple far beyond the classroom. Michael Reuter is the leadership coach, mentor, speaker, and director emeritus of the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton University, a veteran, former AT&T executive, recipient of the Robert F. Greenleaf Legacy Award for steward leadership. Michael has spent more than 4 decades helping people discover their potential to lead with purpose. Michael also wrote the foreword of my book, The Power of Love in Business, and his personal philosophy is one that inspires thousands of leaders. The best is yet to come. Michael, welcome to the Two Rivers Exchange.
Oh, I'm honored. I'm honored, my very dear friend. It's great to be with you.
Same here. So, Michael, we want to jump right into it. Maybe we start from the beginning. I know you're, what was it like growing up in Brooklyn? I know it's changed a lot if people know the tri-state area. But what were those early experiences that shaped you who you are today?
Well, it's an interesting one. It's one of those stories in life where it's inside of you, but you don't know it's there. Growing up in Brooklyn, the only thing I knew in life was it was about people. The kids I grew up with, they always looked towards me, Mike, help us do this, help us do that. And even at age 12, I remember walking down Fifth Avenue in Brooklyn and saying, I can't do it for them all the time. They have to learn to do it themselves. And at 12 years old, something saying like that, I said, wow, that's a little crazy. So it was all about people. That's the only thing I know. And also being in Brooklyn, a Catholic family, that all of a sudden, where am I going to be in life? And it was, well, I'll be a priest.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
And my path went that way, ended up in the seminary in high school, went on to the Jesuits, was a Jesuit brother. And after a time in there, I found that's not my purpose in life, being in the Jesuits, being in the religious. There was something more God had planned for me, and I didn't know it. So I went to St. Peter's University, ended up going to Vietnam, came back and went into business, AT&T. And that began the journey of understanding. And for 23 years on, I woke up every morning not happy with what I do. How'd that start? When I went to AT&T, I asked my friend, my mentor, I said, what do I have to do to be highly successful? He looked at me
Wow.
and he said, finance. And when he said finance, I said, I hate that stuff. That's not me. So,
Right.
so went in,
Um,
finance career. For 23 years, woke up every morning, looked around me, this pit in my stomach saying, this isn't for me. There are people who could look at income statement, balance sheet. They
Mm,
got it. I worked hard, very hard. I was very successful. But during those 23 years, every year that you have the annual performance appraisal,
mm,
and performance appraisal went very well, but every year whoever was giving me the performance appraisal asked the question, why are you in finance? Michael, you have a gift. You care
yeah.
deeply for people. You're always there. You should be a coach, mentor. You should be in
Mm,
HR or something like that. And for
yeah.
20, each of those 23 years, I looked at them all and I said, no, I'm going to be in finance.
Right.
Well, finally, in the year 23, some senior executive coaches at AT&T asked that I be their mentor and coach.
Mhm.
And apparently it worked really well for them. But even more importantly, I found my love of life. I found
Wow.
my purpose, my meaning. It was
Wow.
about people. It was all about people. And that
Yeah.
was the game changer. And, going back to the beginning of the story, it was always there,
Yeah.
but I didn't know it. There was
Right.
that moment of finding, and thank God I found it. And from that point in time, all the expression goes, never worked a day in my life. Yeah,
Yeah.
never have. When you love something, you do it.
Right.
You do it selflessly, unconditionally. And that's been the journey. That's been the journey. After AT&T, or when I was in AT&T, I got a call from Seton University. They were looking for some senior executives, coach mentor the students. And I remember walking into the room, 2007, August of 2007. I looked at them and said, I envy the hell out of you. And they're looking at, who's this guy? Envy the hell out of you. You have PhDs, you teach, at the university level. I've taught graduate school already. I do this thing on leadership. And I said, let's start the meeting. And the dean at the time looked at me and she said, Michael, you may be interested in something. She hands me a piece of paper. She says, it's a position we had. Didn't even look at it. Owen put in my briefcase. Had a nice meeting. Sunday afternoon, preparing for the week, took out this piece of paper. It says Director, Center for Leadership Studies. That's what it was known at the time. I looked at it and said, oh my God. Called her up the next day. She said, I got your attention, didn't I? And said, you certainly did.
Yeah.
And she hired me, and that began the journey at Seton University, doing something that I love. It was serving people. And I had
Mm,
done that throughout my life already, but it was serving these students and one purpose in mind to help them be more than they ever dreamed they could be. Uh, One of the things I had an advisory council of about 100 plus senior executives, CEOs, COOs, CTAT, all those guys and ladies, just absolutely fantastic people, selfless. There was one guy, Joe Sheridan. Joe, at
okay.
that point in time, was president and chief operating officer of Wakefern.
Mhm.
And every fall, speaking to the freshman class, he'd come to speak with them with two books in his hand, one about CEOs, the other one called Six Word Memoirs. Six Word Memoirs. He'd
Short
look
memoirs.
at a
Interesting.
few examples of six word
Mm,
memoirs and they'd ask him, Joe, what are your six words? And he said, I married Joan, had three more. Those were his six words. And he looked
wow.
at the students and he said, I'm giving you 30 seconds, 30 seconds to come up with your six words. And it was serious. He got very serious. He said,
Wow.
I told you mine. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah.
30
Sure.
seconds. The bell rang, we went around the room. Well, it didn't take me 30 seconds. It took me 3 months. To be, a question like that, what are the 6 words that describe you? And after
Yeah.
6 months, I came up with my 6 words: love
There you go. Can you,
unconditionally, care deeply, live passionately. Those are the things that describe me. And that's how I describe myself and people describe me. So the
and could you
journey
dig into
from
this?
that, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, can you dig into this a little bit? And where did those come from? Those three words.
That was, I don't know where it came from. It was just, you know, passion was always a word in my, in my, I hate the word teaching of the student, in my coaching of the students. Live passionately, love unconditionally. For me, it was always selfless giving and caring deeply. That was it. That was me. I knew it was me. I just needed time to find those 6 words. And the beauty of those 6 words is they go beyond the deep understanding of us being human beings. But you go out to the world and somebody says, "Tell me about yourself." For example, an interview. First question on an interview: tell me about yourself. The people who really mess up in the interview are the ones who say, "Well, I'm Mike Reuter and went to St. Peter's." So no, I know that, Mike. It's in
Right.
your CV. Tell me
Yeah.
about yourself. And then to look into somebody's eyes and say, my mentor coach once asked me, what are the 6 words I use to describe myself? All of a sudden, you've said those 6 words, it changes the conversation. It's two human beings talking to each other
Right.
selflessly. It's about, this is me, this is what makes me up in life. And just like yourself, it is that people see. They don't see title, they don't see, the glamour. I wrote a book, I did this. No,
Right.
it is about somebody standing in front of me, talking to me. I feel cared for, I feel respected, I feel valued. The world's changed. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Wow.
simple story. It really is, Owen. It really is.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And you've said that this was with you all along. In the early days, did you feel that when you were in the seminary? Did you feel that that there was something, that purpose there, or even going back to Vietnam and leading in that area? Did you feel that that same concept was there, the mission that
Yeah,
that
it was, yeah, great question. It,
Mm,
it was always there. I reflect back on Seton and Vietnam, and I remember it was always me bringing people together, making sure they were cared for, and etc. We're in the middle of a war, but hey,
yeah,
Mike's pulling us together. He'd like to, get us together. Let's go out and eat in Cholan in Vietnam, in
yeah,
Saigon. You know, it was always there. That crazy guy.
yeah.
Interesting. Interesting.
Well, tell us about that because I think it's intriguing. When we talk a lot about love, passion, connection, and a lot of times people say, "Oh, does that really belong in business?" And we know it does, right? But what would you say to somebody in those places? And I think when you're in Vietnam in a war scenario, it's an extreme for sure, but yet it still felt that belief, that connection. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that. How did you bridge that in that conversation, and maybe how that's relevant today?
Help me with that. Are you
So,
speaking
so the
about
concept,
broadly or Vietnam or?
so the concept of connecting people in a war scenario where people dismissive of that initiative. And because I know in today, when we talk about businesses and we talk about connection, a lot of people are dismissive and they say, oh, well, that's not really, we don't really need that in our business. But do you find that, what was the pushback? Did you experience pushback, first of all, in Vietnam?
No, because it was more of friendship.
Yeah.
That was the connection. You had a bunch of guys together in a pretty elite group. We were in strategic intelligence, and there was a bond there. Always go back to, well, what was the bond? There was a shared purpose and meaning, what we were doing, what our contributions to the war were. And it was each of us saying, hey, we have that shared purpose and meaning. And by the way, we're friends now, friends that I still have today. A group of 8 now is to a group of 3. So it's a little sad that way.
Yeah. But you had that shared purpose, that shared meaning. And when you look at your time at AT&T, would you say that you felt the same kind of thing, that there was a shared mission and purpose and that people were bonded over?
Well, that would come after 23 years, after I found me. It was in the beginning until I found myself who I really was. It was all about business. It was all about getting a position, the money, all those things, title. All of a sudden, they were there. That was part of business. But to come to that moment in time to say, hey, it's about people, and have a complete turnaround, not in the person. The person was always there.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's a different focus. It's
Yeah,
about purpose right now. That's what it was. Interesting
that's right.
times reflecting back on it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think those areas of AT&T were probably a lot of boom years. There's a lot of technology changes, I mean, extraordinary change, right? And even more so, even today, I think there's a lot of lessons people could learn from that time. But were there any experience that really touch about leadership during that time at AT&T?
It was in when I was asked to coach, some of the senior officers to coach his or her vice presidents, senior vice presidents, whatever, uh, even in those moments, it was, taking it to a different level. And these guys and ladies, high degrees in finance,
Mm.
whatever. But when I was speaking with them, I was their coach. All of a sudden, something changed. I remember one particular meeting with the controller. We were sitting there preparing for a meeting with her vice presidents, and she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "Thank you." I said, "Excuse me, Marianne?" She said, "Thank you for you." I said, "Marianne, what are you talking about?"
Yeah.
She said, "Michael, you know my team, a whole bunch of highly experienced finance people, accountants, and all that stuff. And we have at the meeting, and you're sitting there. And, you know, all of a sudden, you'll say something that changes the entire conversation, throwing that human piece. What about
Yeah.
getting away from what about that?" And she said, "I thank you. We thank you." So it's that difference, it's just like John F. Kennedy. Anytime he had a meeting, he always brought somebody in with a different set of skills, sees the world differently. That's what you and I bring to the table. We see the
Yeah.
world differently, not right or wrong, just differently. And it's the blessing, it's the gift God gave us to pass along. So we're
Well,
pretty
love that.
fortunate. We're pretty fortunate.
I love that. Maybe we could talk a little bit about that coaching. And I love that the concept of John F. Kennedy and bringing different people. Perspectives are always so important. But let's talk about that coaching and mentoring, because I know that's a big part of what we bring forward and your achievements on this. But what have you learned about the human potential through all that? We go into coach people.
And what I learned, and well, the potential's there,
Mhm.
you know, and it is looking in their eyes and letting them feel that you believe in them, that all of a sudden their eyes open up and they believe in themselves. You tell them stories about there's so much potential. You are absolutely unique in this entire universe. Entire universe. There's only one of the beautiful you.
Yeah.
It's that one thing. It goes back to a question my mentor when I went to AT&T asked me. He said, Mike, when you wake up in the morning, do you plan to say something stupid? Where are we going with this? Michael, with a smile, and he said, please answer my question. And I said, no, I don't. He said, well, Mike, 99% of us don't, but there's always that 1% that do, smiled on his face.
Mm.
Followed up with another question. Michael, to this point in your life, when you've said something, did anybody look at you and say that's the stupidest, dumbest, whatever the adjective was?
Right.
Anybody ever said that to you? I said, it's happened. He said, never again will it happen. Where are we
Mm.
going with this? He said, each of us have our own worldview, where we're born, our education, our religion, our social environment. That worldview makes us up, and all the experiences we have to this point now, just you and I, our worldview is that's what we know. We answer a question based on all our experiences, all our background, etc. And he looked at me and said, when we answer, it's not right or wrong, it's different. Remember that always. They speak about, you know, Steve Jobs, he imagined the unimaginable.
Mm.
Steve
Yeah.
Jobs, it wasn't unimaginable. That's Steve Jobs. He loved that stuff. Similar
Yeah.
to the people we serve, they see things that nobody else sees.
Yeah.
Just like Jobs, he imagined the unimaginable. If somebody asks a question during our lifetime, there is going to be something that we see that nobody else saw. And that's one of the beautiful gifts. And that is an understanding to help somebody understand it's there already. Don't be afraid to let it go. Don't deny the world. Don't deny yourself. Don't deny the team, the benefit of that one thing you say. It's at an executive meeting at AT&T. We were discussing strategy for the next year. There's always someone who starts the meeting, some guy who, oh, I know the answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So something was put on the floor. A friend of mine sitting across the table, corner of my eye, she was nodding her head. I said, is everything okay? She said, Michael, I see it differently.
Mm.
15 minutes later, she got the stage, and that became a strategy for next year. She
Wow.
saw it differently. And that is the gift each one of us has to share those insights we have. And, it's our job to help them find that. Don't sit there and say, I'm not good enough. No, you're magnificent. You're absolutely magnificent. You're beautiful. And throughout my years with the students, well, with the people I serve, not only students, all the people I serve, it's the same thing. To have that belief in them that they find it in themselves. And they've come back to me and they said, oh my God, it was life changing to understand that it was always there. And they keep on finding every day till we die, there's something more. That's the beauty of the journey. Absolutely is.
That is beautiful. And I love that so much. When we that aspect of fear can derail everything, right? It's really the enemy, isn't it?
Right.
The fear of ourselves and not having that belief. And if you instill that one thing, if you said to have that belief is so important, and I put it so eloquently, and I love that. That really answers the question about human potential. Um, And so, what would you say as far as leaders? Because I would love to see when we'd love to see all leaders have that belief in other people. But what really separates great leaders to affect from effective managers?
The great leaders have that belief in people. They take it a step beyond. It goes back to the simple truth. In great being, there is great doing. We can, rise to the top doing truly great things. But if that inner spirit within us isn't there to help people move themselves along, to be part of a shared purpose, to be part of something to be recognized, valued, yeah, you can get great things accomplished, but you're killing the people along the way.
Right.
And that's the sad part. And do they do it intentionally? Probably not. Again, their worldview is, hey, I got to make money, I got to take it to the top, etc. It is to help them open their eyes to the people
Yeah.
around them. One of the executives I served at AT&T, when I started coaching, I suggested to him, get out of the office, walk around, and why don't you give them umbrellas or something, just to thank him.
Yeah.
3 months later, he came to my office and he said, thank you. I said, for what? He said, for the gift of helping me recognize and value people because it's
Wow.
world changing. He said, I give them a $15 umbrella. They give me their life. It's that thing. And that shouldn't be the drive. I want your life. No, it is the genuineness of it that people feel. Again, Maya Angelou, they may not remember ever what I said, but they'll
Right.
always remember how I made them feel. That is critical. They believe in you. They can trust you. All those things that change life. And that's how it is. I know with you, in my experiences, Mike, you believed in me, you trusted me, you cared for me. You were always there. You're always
Wow.
there. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really, and I think that really talks a lot about the that power of love in business we talked about, right? When I wrote the forward of my book, but obviously we belong, love belongs in conversations and leadership. But how would you define servant leadership? And you know, where do you see that today? Because the world's changed a lot and people are somewhat disconnected. But where do you think servant leadership belongs today in the workplace?
Well, servant leadership. I always, going back to, I was asked to speak on servant leadership at a forum at Seton Hall. And during those words, my introductory words, I said the choice of the word servant is probably not, one that in the business world, is going to be widely accepted
Right.
because people look down, oh, you're a servant. Yeah,
Right.
I am. But servant, it gets, getting back to the basic, it is a selfless giving. I serve you. And
Yeah.
people always, surprise me when they come back and said, Michael, when we first met, you said something that took me back. You didn't say, how can I help you? You said, how can I serve you? Because it's that different level. Hey, service, it's total giving, not asking for anything. I serve you. Mother Teresa, Mother Teresa, she served. So servant leadership may not have the title, they one could say they cover with the word emotional intelligence. you know
Right.
that's the emotional intelligence that is height is servant leadership. Well,
Sure.
whatever you call it, it's about servant leadership, your selfless giving to others to help them achieve their greatest potential. Nothing asked for, but everything given.
Love that. And it kind of that leads into my other question. I hear this a lot is, can you be compassionate and still be high performing, right? We talk about performance, whether an executive or middle management or somebody on the street. And I guess that comes back, can leaders both be compassionate and high performing?
I would say if they're compassionate, they are high performing, but that's not the question you asked. Yeah, I've often in really difficult, challenging situations, people look at me and say, well, Mike, you're a softie, you know, you know, you really need to push hard.
Mhm.
Well, truly understanding people and understanding yourself, you know that there are red lines that are inside of
Yes.
you that are set. And if somebody crosses those red lines, whether they be your red lines or they be institutional guidelines or whatever, you work with that and say, hey, that's my responsibility to abide to my shareholders, to the people I serve, to make sure the job gets done. Does this mean that I scream at somebody? No. Maybe I get a little stern and push and say, hey, we have a commitment, we have a shared commitment. You approach it differently rather than the shout. There's that, hey, what do we share? What can you give? You have it all. That's why we're asking you to do it. And all of a sudden, the person feels values, he gets
Right.
involved, she gets involved in it. So
Yeah.
yeah, there you can get it done. You don't have to be a screamer to get it done. It's there are things we all have to do, our commitment, our purpose, our mission. Going back to the Army days, I have a mission. I need to accomplish this. You're part of that. How can we do it?
Exactly. Yeah. We often say that fear gets compliance and love gets advocacy. Right.
Oh, I
As you
love
said.
that. I love that. Thank you for the gift.
Um, yeah. But yeah, people do much more in that. But let's shift gears here. Luckily your passion is infectious, and we always love connecting. But I love your phrase, "The best is yet to come." Yeah, that kind of it's kind of your signature phrase. What does that mean to you today? The best is yet to come.
Truly, what it says, there's, what we have evolved to today from the beginning, from our birth, each step, there's always something more, just like the phrase goes, good is not good enough, great is not great enough. There is always something more. And to limit ourselves in saying we've achieved our best, no, there are no limits. There's tomorrow. There's the next moment. Truly, our our purpose in life is to give everything and find those gifts we have that at end of days, we can smile, turn around, smile at family, friends, whatever, and said, no regrets, no regrets. I really gave it my all. I did achieve my best. And I've had a few more days, even be better, even be better. So truly, the best is yet to come. Truly.
It's fantastic. That's right. I think it's great encouragement, especially in such uncertain times. You know, we are experiencing a major change, as we did many times through the past 50 years with technology, with AI, and so on. There's a lot of disruption, right? But how can leaders, maintain hope during these when there's uncertainty and rapid change? How would you, what advice would you give them to maintain that hope and maybe that vision?
Well, it goes to the best is yet to come. It is a mindset. It's positivity of mindset to look at the world filled with possibilities, uh, and not just say, I can't do it. It's, similar to that situation. If I walked into your office, you're my boss, and you said, Mike, I have a project for you, and you start describing the project, and while you're describing it, I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I can't do that. And it's a killer. I'm dead. I'm
Yeah.
dead. But
Right.
while you're talking, if I'm saying, what an opportunity to grow, an
Mm,
opportunity to push myself, to open my eyes to new things. That's what it's all about. Every day there are things outside we may have seen before, but never truly seen and understood. And that's our challenge to go and find them all, whether it's, a run, going out for a run, or picking up a book and reading something. Oh my God, never saw that. Those are the gifts of life. That's again the positivity of mindset. This will be my best day yet. Yeah, it will be. It will be.
it's, it's beautiful. And I think it's great advice. I think a lot of folks sometimes feel stuck or disconnected, and maybe they're pushing and they're not seeing results, but I could see having that run or that mindset could really help them get unstuck and find that connection and sense of purpose.
Yeah, yeah. When you find the connection, the work that we do, you and I do, and people like us, and let's not limit it to us, but people, if they make a connection, that connection grows. The gift is passed one to the other, etc. You know,
Yeah,
everybody, there's a chance for everybody to get involved. Don't limit it. Just shift the mindset a little.
love that. So let's ask the question, what are you still excited to build? What's next for you?
Still find more of myself as somebody gave me a book the other day. Uh, it was the the late years of something. I can't remember what it was, but I was reading it and speak about people's in their 70s and 80s that people look at a limiting factor. They've
Mm,
done all this, all of a sudden they've achieved this point in life that they were highly successful. Now all of a sudden the world's open to them. Well, what do I do? I don't have that title. I don't have that job. You don't want to
yeah,
sit there and die. There is there are years ahead.
yeah,
All of a sudden, it's to commit to yourself, you know, what will I do today that will make me happy? Again, the mindset is always looking
yeah,
to continue to put forward. Me personally, what do I want to do? There's so many things that I still don't know about.
yeah,
I'm still joyfully involved at Seton Hall, having the opportunity to work with the students, with the institute, to deal with new technologies, etc. It's always, oh my God, look at this so much more. Not having a mindset of, oh no, this is work. I don't want to do that anymore. I'll sit back.
yeah.
On a personal level, there's one thing I do the weekly 3-minute leadership, and everybody's write a book, write a book, write a book. Well, that's that's on
Right.
the agenda.
Yeah.
Something to do before day's end. I plan to live to 150. So I got time left, but don't waste
That's
that
good.
time. Don't waste that time.
Yeah. Well, I do appreciate the 3-minute leadership emails each week. I do subscribe. If our listeners haven't subscribed, I'll put the link in the comments and make sure you can subscribe. They're so beautiful. We love getting those on Sunday morning. Kind of inspires. Great way to set up the week. But
Very
Michael, I
kind.
usually get to the area where we ask our four signature questions. And what did you love enough to build?
Two sides to that question. One, my personal life. The second, the
Mhm.
opportunity to have joined Seton Hall
Yeah.
and built their leadership program that has impacted the lives of hundreds of students, and it'll go on, in perpetuity. Just to have been part of that, to have the honor to serve those students,
Wow.
going back to the honor I have of serving the people I serve. That's
Wow.
one of the greatest thing. And to find that, didn't end up being a priest, but he snatched me anyway. So
I love that. So let me ask you this question. Who believed in you before everyone else did?
uh, I would say my mom. I would say my mom. Uh,
Yeah.
when she was dying, one of those last conversation, she looked at me and she surprised me with the words saying, "You were always my spiritual one."
Oh,
And it absolutely surprised me. To her, she saw something. And in all the growing up I did, she was growing that. So I thank her. I thank her.
that's beautiful. She believed in you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Love that. So, and I know you work with, and thanks for sharing that. I know you work with a lot of young professionals coming out, but what's one lesson you would hope for future generations would never forget?
That's about, wow. Going back to what we said before, the mindset, the belief that the best is yet to come. And
Yeah,
it's in our, and it's, caveat with that, it's in our hands. It doesn't happen automatically saying, I'll wait for tomorrow. No, it's in your hands. It's now. You make the change.
that's beautiful. Love that. Love that. So, Michael, that we're going to wrap up, but thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom and your commitment to helping others become the best selves. We heard that message throughout these past half hour. So, and I want to thank everybody for joining the Two Rivers Exchange, where leaders and founders and change makers share their stories behind the meaningful success. And we certainly saw that here today. And this conversation inspired you, and follow and share this episode with someone you care about, or please leave a review. And you can always connect with me and Michael over on LinkedIn or at Seton Hall Leadership, and or reach me at owen-burns.com. Until next time, keep building what matters, and remember, the best is yet to come.
Thank you.